We're waiting on Councilmember Cotner. And there he is.
Can you turn this microphone off?
Unplug it. Do you know how to do that, Jennifer?
Maybe that's what our customer feedback was.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Reynoldsburg City Council meeting. I would like to call the September 14th, 2020 Reynoldsburg City Council meeting to order. The time is now 6:34. I am Council President Angie Jenkins. This meeting is being held through electronic conferencing and live streamed on our city's Facebook page. Molly, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Bryant,
Here.
Councilmember Strickland,
Present.
Councilmember Savati,
Here.
Councilmember Pecoro,
Here.
Councilmember Lawson Rowe,
Here.
Councilmember Cotner,
Here.
Councilmember Baker,
Here.
President Jenkins.
Here. Next, we'll have the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda for this evening? Seeing none, the agenda stands approved as submitted. Next, we'll have the approval of minutes. The approval of the City Council regular meeting minutes of July 27th, 2020. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, the minutes stand approved as submitted. Approval of the City Council special meeting minutes of August 26, 2020. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to those minutes? Seeing none, the minutes stand approved as submitted. Next, we'll have community comments. Molly, did you receive any comments from the community?
Yes, we have Jen on Zoom, and she would like to make a comment. Plus, we have an individual here in the audience that would also make a comment.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Jen.
Hi there. First of all, Molly, I apologize. I misread on my calendar. I thought it was 6 o'clock, so I sent you an email asking why I've been waiting in the lobby for 15 minutes. So let me just own that in front of everybody. So I would like to just take a minute to talk about crosswalk safety as well. I thought that schools were going to start next week, but apparently that's up in the air again. We have a crosswalk specifically at Broadwin and Graham. That is the crosswalk that the kids use. That's the first thing that I want to say. There is one a little further up that has better markings, better visibility, but that's not the one that the neighborhood kids use. There are actually two crosswalks, one across Broadwin and the other across Graham. It is a minor intersection on a busy road that's only going to get busier with all these new housing projects that are coming up on Wagner and Taylor, and Graham is now a major artery, whether we who live here like it or not. I can tell you we don't like it, but that's a different conversation. But it's important to note that Broadwin and Graham is a minor intersection because cars are not inclined to stop or slow down at minor intersections. So even though the speed limit is 25, and most drivers take that as a suggestion anyway, there isn't anything physical to really stop them or deter them and slow them down. Even more important, there's nothing that really gives any kind of indication that there's a crosswalk there in the first place. The paint is faded. On the crosswalk that goes across Broadway, half of it is actually completely gone. In addition to it being faded, there is zero signage. On the pedestrian side, where we have the obligation to look and make sure that there aren't any cars coming so we can step out into the intersection, there's not clear visibility. There's no clear line of sight either for pedestrians or for the cars that are coming to see that there's somebody waiting to cross. So I run this neighborhood frequently. I walk frequently. I see this every single day. I actually took video to show cars speeding through here. They stop in the middle of the crosswalk, so it's obstructed for pedestrians. And to be fair to the drivers, I just don't know that they even know there's a crosswalk there. So I did already contact the service director. I will do follow-up number 4 with them tomorrow because he did promise me that that they would follow up and get some signage down there, at least that they had in storage. That has not happened, nor has anyone followed up with me. But I'm telling you that somebody's going to get hit, and it's going to take a kid getting killed or hurt before we do something. So I want it on record that I'm asking you to put a relatively inexpensive, easy solution in place that we can do right away, the paint and the signage. The final thing that I'm going to add to that is the deterrence for speeders, because the police department is not effective at deterring speeders. They do spend quite a bit of time on Graham Road by the church, but once they're gone, I think you all know how that story goes. So long term, something to consider, some type of speed hump or the orange poles like what's in the middle of the road at Prost. Those are very effective. And even I'm going to throw it out there for those of you interested in turning Reynoldsburg into something that we've never seen before. Think what German Village has. They have cobblestone. And when you have cobblestone, not only is it quaint, which is very appropriate for old Reynoldsburg, but it's really hard to speed unless you want to destroy your struts. So that's something to consider for those of you who are forward thinking and want to take us a little bit further into the future. But that's my piece. I want a solution before my kid, who will eventually go back to Hannah Ashton, gets run over.
If I may, I'm sorry, this is Service Director William. I know we spoke, I think it was last week about this on the phone, is that correct? And
Yep.
I wish we were having this conversation maybe next week. Our superintendent is getting signs put there, and we're going to enhance, remark the crosswalk. You know, we're going to look at it and see what else we can do with our striping program to maybe enhance it a little bit better. But we're definitely going to get those signs up, I would say probably within the next week, if not sooner, and do the enhancement. Now the striping, it's part of our street program. It's just going to be added into that. It's only a little bit of striping to do, but we'll add that with that program. That might happen in like a week or two, but the signs will definitely go up, which will at least help. I agree with you. At least help give some alert to the traveling motorists. But yeah, sight lines are a concern, as we talked about too, and just trying to find other ways that we can maybe enhance that. But I want you to know that we definitely are on that. So. Okay.
No one followed up with me after our conversation, so I had no idea where we stood with it. So I appreciate.
Yeah. That's okay. Yeah, I know we talked about the signs and looking at other alternatives. I don't think we've really got into anything else like you were talking about, some of those other options, but definitely the signage and enhancing the crosswalk and refreshing all those marks.
Well, I know that adding something like cobblestone is definitely a longer term, bigger project. And I'm sure that that's going to be pretty polarizing and expensive to even talk about. But German Village does it, and it's really hard to go faster than 25 through German Village. And that's just one option. But what I'm saying is that if we can be innovative, forward-thinking people, there are solutions that will not only protect people, but maybe even enhance the city. Or we could close down Graham Road through Livingston. That would be fantastic, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Jen, I wanted to thank you for coming on and giving your comments tonight. One of the things that I've wanted for a while, but we haven't had, budgetary things and some other issues, but speed tables as opposed to speed bumps, because I've never met anybody that thought a speed bump was great, but because they're so jarring to your car. But a speed table, I think would be, it does cost more to have that put in. But I think, Graham Road's a good candidate, as well as, Priestley and Kingsley, Taft, Rose Hill. We've got a number of places where we've got a lot of children living in the area, and speeding is a concern through these residential areas. So I just wanted to thank you for taking a moment to join us in the meeting tonight.
And I would close by saying too, and Joseph and Chris, I think actually you guys came out to my house once and we talked about this in person, taking us to the next level in terms of being a walkable city. Pedestrians have to feel safe. I could walk with my kids down to where Carnival used to be. I can walk up to Prost and Tempe and Barth. I go right by Vic's Pizza and all of those things up there in Old Reynoldsburg that we want to take advantage of. But if we don't feel safe, and I'm going to be honest with you, I'm terrified at the thought of my kids going up to Vic's by themselves for pizza. So I appreciate the time, and I hope to actually see something come of it.
Thank you for bringing that to council this evening. It was also something that was
Madam
on the
President.
news. Yes.
Oh, I was going to add to that. I understand her concern because the other day when I was driving down Main Street past Vic's, past Tempe Taco, there were people that were standing on the corner trying to cross the street to get to Tempe, and none of the cars were stopping. I know we have one of those walkable lights where you push the button, you walk across with the flag. But to be honest, I would like to see that the light to be changed to something a little bigger so cars can actually pay attention to it. Something like what we have on Livingston, because nobody was stopping for that crosswalk. Either they wasn't paying attention to the sign or they just didn't care. So I do sympathize with what Ms. Jen says, and something do need to be done. So that's all I just want to say.
Yes, I also agree that there are many areas where it's dangerous for children to cross, and recently thought about the McNaughton situation where there was a child that was struck, and reached out to someone on city council in Columbus to see if they have anything that they're putting in place to rectify that situation down on McNaughton. It was on the news today also. I believe the area is called Eastmore, where they put up additional signs for children crossing in that neighborhood where they feel as though it's dangerous and speeders are going down the street. In Cincinnati, they had on the news that there's crosswalks where they have put flags on the poles so that when you're crossing, you can cross and wave the flag and then put the flag back on the opposite side so that someone is able to let the cars know that they're about to cross the street. And I'd never seen anything like that until I saw that on the news in Cincinnati. So I agree that we can make things a lot safer for our pedestrians that are trying to cross or even ride a bike to get across some of our streets and neighborhoods. And especially when whenever the buses are put back in place for the children to go to school, we need to make sure that it is safe for them to be able to get on their school buses. So yes, that is an important topic and that we need to look into it further.
Madam President, we do have a resident here in council that would like to make a comment. Please go
Thank
ahead.
you.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Why don't you remove your mask?
Good, thank you. I'm Herman Wright. I reside on Glacier Avenue. I'm a Reynoldsburg resident, been here for 19 years. I'd like to thank council for its transparency regarding the formulation of a civilian review board, police review board. Once again, council appears to be proposing a solution in search of a problem. A This Week newspaper article stated that the city feels that it is important to maintain public safety, public confidence, and public confidence in law enforcement, that allegations of misconduct against the public are being thoroughly investigated and evaluated by the independent board. The article went on to say that the proposed legislation is not a reaction to any specific incidents or complaints. So I ask you, why do we need a board made up of civilians to oversee the police department that historically operates with the highest integrity and honesty and integrity? So I ask you, why do we need this board? Council says that you are engaging the community while standing in partnership, shoulder to shoulder with the police department, the police force, because they are important partners in our community and we respect them. The proposed legislation and board said just the opposite. The board is to be made up of 9 members, 1 from each of the city's wards, 5 nominated by the mayor, and there is a particular emphasis on the fact that 2 of the members are nominated by the mayor must be minorities. There is mention of a time to have the tough conversation regarding racial equality and discrimination. The proposed legislation is supposed to address discriminatory conduct and bias directed toward any person on the basis of race, color, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or expression, and so on. Here we go again. It appears to me that the council spends a lot of time concentrating on supposed issues that are not in fact issues in Reynoldsburg. I've been a resident of Reynoldsburg for over 19 years, and in that time, I've never heard of any instance where race or discrimination has been raised as an issue with regard to the police department or any city official. Reynoldsburg is not Ferguson, Missouri. It's not Rochester, New York, or any other city where there's alleged systemic racism by the city officials or the police department. If council truly wants to stand in partnership with our police department, then I say cease with the constant insinuations that there are problems with racial equality where there is none. Allow the chief and the rank and file to do their jobs without the constant looking for them to make mistakes or minor errors in judgment. Once again, I say council would be better served by concentrating their efforts on economic development and building a more sustainable tax base to support our residents. And just to be clear, I am not a police officer. I never have been one. I do support them. And like I said, I've been here for 19 years and I am so sick and tired of every time I look around and I see something from council, we're dwelling on this race thing. It's too much. We don't need it. Allow the police department to do their jobs. Stop insinuating that Reynoldsburg is a racist city. It is not, okay? So I urge you, I know you're gonna do whatever the heck you wanna do anyway. I know you're gonna form this board, but once again, I think you guys need to concentrate on other things. And this city and our department, our city officials and the police department would be better served by that. Thank you.
Thank you for coming in and speaking this evening. Appreciate your comments. Molly, do we have any other speakers in the chamber or online?
No, we do not. Not for community comments.
Thank
Oh,
you.
I'm sorry. Assistant Chief Kraus, had you decided to speak during community comments?
I believe Lori requested time throughout the council meeting.
Okay, well, you can speak now or when Councilmember Baker discusses the West Licking Fire District. When he gives.
We'll wait for Mr. Baker.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. Madam President, there are no other citizen comments.
Thank you. Are there any comments from council? Do we have any comments from Mayor Begany?
Yes, Madam President, thank you. Later on this evening, council will be giving a couple of proclamations for various causes. And so in advance of that, those same resolutions that I have, I will skip, but I do have a few that I would like to share, as well as an update from a busy few weeks since you were on the vacation in August. My first proclamation is to recognize Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. From my office, whereas childhood cancer is the leading cause of death by disease in children, 1 in 285 children in the United States will be diagnosed by their 20th birthday. And whereas 46 children per day, or 16,790 children, are diagnosed with cancer annually in the United States, and whereas there are approximately 40,000 children on active treatment at any given time, and whereas the average age of diagnosis is 6 years old compared to 66 years for adults cancer diagnosis, whereas on average, there's been a 0.6% increase in incident per year since the mid-1970s, resulting in an overall incident increase of 20% over the last 40 years. And whereas 2/3 of childhood cancer patients will have chronic health conditions as a result of their treatment toxicity, with 1/4 being classified as severe to life-threatening. And whereas approximately 1/2 of childhood cancer families rate the associated financial toxicity due to out-of-pocket expenses considerable to severe. And whereas in the last 20 years, only 4 new drugs have been approved by the FDA to specifically treat childhood cancer. And whereas hundreds of nonprofit organizations at the local and national level, including the Friends of Faith, Prudent Foundation, are helping children with cancer and their families cope through educational, emotional, and financial support. And whereas researchers and healthcare professionals work diligently, dedicating their expertise to treat and cure children with cancer. And whereas too many children are affected by this deadly disease and more must be done to raise awareness and, most importantly, find a cure, I, Joe Begany, Mayor of the City of Reynoldsburg, Ohio, proclaim September 2020 as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. There are members of our community that are suffering for this right now, and my thoughts and prayers go out to you and your families. I also have one additional proclamation. This one is a little bit more familiar to some of us. It is actually, believe it or not, coming up on Constitution Week. So I would like to proclaim that Constitution Week be recognized. Whereas the Constitution of the United States of America, the guardian of our liberties, embodies the principles of government and a republic dedicated to rule by law. And whereas September 17th marks the 233rd anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention. Whereas it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to that magnificent document and its memorable anniversary, and to the patriotic celebrations which will commemorate the occasion. Whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America, designated September 17th through 23rd as Constitution Week. Now, therefore, I, Joe Begany, Mayor of the City of Reynoldsburg, Ohio, do hereby proclaim September 17th through 23rd, 2020 as Constitution Week. And you all should have been invited to recognize this at City Hall at 4 p.m. on the 17th with a special guest, most likely in very time period appropriate costume to recognize Constitution Day. Moving beyond the proclamations, I do have some updates for everyone. Again, as you know, we did put a position posting for the deputy chief. We have found our deputy chief. We are now just working through the paperwork process and background checks and things like that. So we hope to have an official announcement within the next few weeks. We also have a very timely topic, the community commission that is actually being formed to help address certain issues such as the traffic and speeding in the community. That meeting is scheduled for this Wednesday at 7 p.m. We plan on forming a structure for future meetings as well as establishing goals for all of them. I also have information as far as Halloween. As of right now, Halloween is still a go on Thursday, October 29th from 6 to 8 p.m. We are waiting some additional information from the Franklin County Department of Health for some specific requirements for those to participate in Trick or Treat. We are also waiting to hear back from the Community Association and the Franklin County Department of Health for a potential trunk or treat night at Civic Park, very similar to what we did for our Fair Food drive-through earlier this summer. Wanted to specifically mention an addition to potentially the Wagner Road redevelopment plan once that gets kicked off. Due to public comment as well as information, there is a potential for adding additional traffic lights at Priestley and Wagner Road in that Wagner Road plan later on, in addition to the sidewalks and bike paths that will help arrange that. We will be having a code enforcement town hall meeting on September 30th. Again, assuming that we are able to have this live at City Hall, we plan on doing so. This will bring in one of our code enforcers to talk a little bit about what they are looking for with residential communities, as well as options for how to do some do-it-yourself things to take care of the property and to kind of get ready and geared up for the coming winter. Later this evening, you will be talking about the 2021 roads programs. We are identifying the roads for the 2021. We are a little bit fluid in this right now because we are waiting to find out as much of a handle as we can on our finances to see what kind of roads budget we will have next year. The auditor's office and the mayor's office and the service director are working hard to try and find that as well. I have seen some social media chatter about requests from members of council about a 5-way roundabout. So we will kind of gather some of the information that has already been brought to us in the past to kind of disseminate that amongst council to take a look at it if that's the decision that council would like to go. We are also being asked by the Department of Transportation, the Ohio Department of Transportation, to participate in exploratory ideas for the 70 Bryce corridor, as well as the 256 interchange in the year 2025 and beyond. Please remember that. That would be more information coming. And now we finally get to all the fun stuff that I like to talk about. As we know that last Friday was the last day for the CARES Act Small Business Grant application process. We did get 24 applications in, so we will be reviewing those applications and making our recommendations and hopefully cutting the check within the next week to 10 days. For your information, planning ahead, I wanted to know your thoughts on the 2021 budget. I know in the past, it is asked that some of our directors come and speak about the budget sometime in the November council meetings. If that is something that you would like to continue, you can please let me know and we'll make them available. My hope is to have a budget to you for a first read on November 9th, so you can ask questions at that point in time. And now, we got 2 checks today, recently actually, from reimbursement to the city from AEP for some of our charging stations, totaling about $200,000. I know they were brought down to the auditor's office today. This is reimbursing us for some of the expenses that were there, so we are now back whole in that regard. And I mentioned that the YMCA also we were looking to get additional funds back from the earlier extra money that was used to finish off the YMCA. And we are still looking for every final detail, but it looks like we will have in excess of over $200,000 returned to the CIP based on what happened with the YMCA project. So it's a little less than half of what was requested earlier in the year. But we worked very hard with CT Consultants as well as the YMCA and Gil Bain to make sure that everything was identified specifically and accounted for perfectly. So we are around that $200,000 mark. We're just keeping it open just on the off chance something else comes in. But again, those are some of the good things. So again, it's not always an opportunity that I get to inform council that we actually have money coming into the city through something like this, as usually it's the other way around. So I appreciate that. And if you have any questions about any of those items, feel free as always to contact me. And I look forward to hearing your feedback about directors' participation in the budgets in November. Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have presentation that was going to be with Les Samaji, Director of Reynoldsburg Visitors Bureau, and he just contacted us and said that
Madam President, if you can hear us, your audio has frozen. Okay. My guess is President Jenkins will be coming right there. She is.
next we will have motions, and we have a few changes. Molly, would you like to let us know what those changes are?
As we have a guest for our motion for Prostate Cancer Recognition Month, we're going to switch up and let Councilmember Cotner introduce our guest and read that resolution. And so our guest doesn't have to sit through any more of this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want me to read the resolution first or wait?
No, you can. No, he can speak first. That's fine.
Okay. So I will, anyone who has been around Central Ohio for a little while and ever had the opportunity in years past to turn on some Ohio State football on Saturday afternoons would know this gentleman. And if you get a chance to listen to any current 610 or hear him talking, he's very passionate about the subject tonight of Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. He has started an organization. He's trying desperately to raise awareness. And so most of us know someone who's been impacted through prostate cancer. My father dealt with this, and I would just, encourage us to listen and be open to some of these comments and expand our knowledge a little bit and hopefully be able to help others in our greater community. And so with those few words, I would like to thank Mr. Demetrius Stanley for joining us this evening and turn the microphone to him for a bit and share some words about, again, the mission he's trying to accomplish right now. Thank you, sir.
Oh, no problem. Thank you. Thank you guys for having me be a part of this. And like you've heard, this is Prostate Cancer Awareness Month, September. I was diagnosed last September, ironically. And it was quite a shocking thing. And if you do know anything about me, you'll know that I'm 45, which is, said to be very young for a lot of people from the knowledge that we have gained over the years. But I'm here to tell you, men in their 30s are now getting prostate cancer. It's something that a lot of people aren't aware of. And I believe that's the fault of us men. We don't talk about our health enough. And I started Brave Men Inc. and Real Men Talk About Health is our motto. And my goal is to let people understand that it's out there. I mean, if you think about it, 33,000 women in a year will die from breast cancer. 30,000 men will die from prostate cancer. And, it's women do a great job of talking about, breast cancer and raising money and doing events and bringing the awareness to the public. And we men do a terrible job, and men are suffering in silence with this disease, and they don't need to be. My big push is to, right now, the detection phase is at 50. They want you to get checked at 50. Well, my push is to get men to start getting checked at 40. I got checked at 40. I was in good health. My doctor said he couldn't believe how healthy my prostate was. By the time I was 45, I was at stage 4. So it can come on pretty quick. And you have to be aware of what's happening with your body. So through Brave Men Inc., I want to bring awareness. We're going to be doing research. I have surgeon and a urologist on my board. Also with raising money to help people with bills that they may not be able to pay some bills, or help people that need to can't afford to copay to get checked. That's what Brave Men Inc. is here for. And also my wife is very much involved, and we want to create a community that people can call when they get diagnosed or when they're going through it, because one thing we didn't have anybody to talk to. So that's what made me bring this, create this foundation, Brave Men Inc. So that's why we're here. And right now we're doing a fundraiser on 610 WTVN every day this week. So that's been going very well so far. And just to get more knowledge about it, because it affects everybody in your family, and especially your wife. And that's the one thing a lot of people don't talk about, is the partner. And, there's a lot of issues that come with it. I got the surgery in October. Well, there's erectile dysfunction. There's, the psychological aspect. There's things you can do to help yourself in that manner. But, for a time period, it's affecting everything about your relationship, because the intimacy part goes away. I know that's probably too much information, but that's kind of the real deal of having prostate cancer. So I feel like me being able to talk about it to the public, it's therapy for me. And it's an honor when someone texts me, emails me, or sees me in public and says, "Hey, I went and got tested because of what you said." And that makes me feel better about what I'm going through, that I can help in the community and help men not have to go through what I went through, because a lot of men die from this and they don't need to. They die from it because of stubbornness and because of not wanting to go to the doctor just to get checked, because they don't want to get bad news, or they think it's just going to go away. Well, it's not. It's only going to get worse, and you want to catch it before it spreads. Unfortunately, it got into my lymph nodes, so that's something I'm still dealing with, but I'm dealing with it pretty well. And that's about it. It's just about getting awareness and letting men know it's not an old man's disease. It is a young man's disease now. And, 45 for me, that's very young. And like I said, men are being diagnosed in their 30s. So it's time for us to put some recognition to this and bring awareness and let men know you can't just walk around. And for me, a real man is a man that's healthy and taking care of themselves so they can take care of and provide for their family. And that's, at the end of the day, that's what it's about for me. So I want to thank you guys for letting me talk to you. And it's Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. And I really appreciate it, and letting me get, this information out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Demetrius. Really appreciate you coming and hanging in with us. So it's bravemeninc.com would be one of our action items. Go check out your website, bravemeninc.com.
Yes, sir.
And probably your other biggest call to actions for us. We can pass a motion and a resolution and talk about it, but your biggest action items that you would want to see from, us as a whole and us individually, how best could we continue to be a part of this mission for you?
Talk about prostate cancer. Just talk about it. Literally just talk about it. Tell people that it's out there. Let people know that, my father went through it. I'm going through it. I went through it. Because the biggest problem and why it's so bad for men is because we don't simply just talk about the disease. We don't talk about how it affects our lives. We don't talk about what happens, when you have to get the surgery, or what you can do to prevent yourself from having to get to the point of surgery. So that literally is the goal right now, because I think first off, you have to talk about it. People have to know it's there. Everybody that I talk to, they don't understand how severe this is and how many men are struggling with this disease. And it blows my mind, because we're not far off of breast cancer and the amount of deaths that happen per year, and there's so much knowledge, there's so much money behind it, there's so much awareness. Well, this is the same exact type of thing. It's a hormone disease. When a woman gets breast cancer, they put her on drugs that suppress estrogen. Well, when you get prostate cancer, they put you on a drug called Lupron that suppresses your testosterone. So it's right there. It's the same thing, and it's the same severity, and people are struggling, and they don't need to be, but it's our fault as adults and as adult men, because we're not talking about it, because I think a lot of men are ashamed, but at the end of the day, your family wants you to be around. They don't care about all the other issues. And there's, like I said, there's other options that you can use, but that's what you can do, is just get the information out there, make men aware, make wives aware, because one thing I do know is most of the time a man's not going to go to the doctor unless his wife kind of forces him to. And that's why my wife and I have made this a couples thing, because it takes both. And once it happens, I tell you, it definitely puts your relationship in a whirlspin. And if you're not strong enough, and if you're not talking about it, and staying together and doing the best you can to get through it, it can ruin your relationship. So I just say, talk about it, man. Just let people know what it is, how it happens. It's not an old man's disease anymore. That's a myth. And, you know, just kind of keep moving from there. And I think if we start talking about it, the action will take place.
Great. Thank you. Well, I'll let others communicate. I'll step back here. Thank you so much. I appreciate you really being here. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, I would like to thank you for coming and bringing this topic forward and letting us know about how we can support this cause. But I have a couple of questions.
Yes,
As a
ma'am.
man, is there an age in which you're supposed to ask for the test, and does the doctor always test you for that at that age, or do you have to ask for that specifically?
Well, you'll have to ask for it. They say the age is 50 is when they recommend that you get tested. But you know, there's a lot of us that have it's in our family, and so knowing your family history is important, especially as an African American male. Who more African American men are dying from prostate cancer than white men. I don't know specifically why that is, but it's a thing, and I don't know if that has to do with us going to the doctor less, or you know, equity in healthcare, or whatever the case may be. But especially as an African American man, you have to know your family history, and that's very important. But I'm getting pushback of getting men to get tested before 50, whatever reason, I don't know. But I feel like you should, at least by the time you hit 40, because that's when the body really starts to change. That's when you should start getting tested for things like this. So that's yeah, you're gonna have to go in and ask for it, unfortunately. But hopefully they start, with my push, doctors start, you know, getting ahead of the game.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any other questions from council?
Yes, say something.
Yes.
Madam President, may I offer a comment?
Yes, Councilwoman Lawson Rowe.
Okay, Mr. Stanley, thank you so much for using your platform and helping to educate us. And as we are learning with all of these detrimental health issues that are out there, being our own advocate is key. And so that's what I'm hearing from you in terms of we must, you know, encourage our husbands and brothers to go, our uncles, and we must be their advocate. They must advocate for themselves. And I'm also hearing early detection. And,
Yes.
and we hear that with breast cancer, early detection is key. So I appreciate your candor. I appreciate your courage in talking about this in such a public forum. And I will do my due diligence with my friends and family.
Yes, the best thing you can do, because, you know, with women, from the time you hit, you know, teen years, you got to go to the doctor, right? It's ingrained in you guys. Men aren't the same, you know, and I think women can be a very important part of helping us men not suffer through what I'm going through, because you're used to that. You know, that's what you do from the time you turn into a teenager. You have to go to the doctor year after year after year. Well, you can help me, you can help your husband, boyfriend, you can help, you know, whoever the men are in your life, because that's who's going to really push this thing forward. And that's why I really talk to women a lot more than I talk to men, because I know that women are more apt to go to the doctor and make sure they stay ahead of their health more than men. So thank you, ma'am. I really appreciate it.
Thank
yeah,
you.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilwoman Strickland.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Mr. Staley, I just want to say thank you so much for coming this evening and sharing your story. My father was actually diagnosed with prostate cancer about 4 years ago, and he was, I believe, in the 3rd or 4th stage. So he is right now doing fine. But it's so important that we encourage our loved ones to make sure they are getting checked out and really advocating, being,
Yes.
you know, having someone there to advocate that you need the test. And that's for anything. Because we do have these standards that, we want to wait until we 50 or 40 or don't even believe it may happen to us. But my father was probably in his, I want to say 60s. So he found out later in life. But however, so I just commend you for just sharing your story and also having your wife there to help you get through that, because I understand from a distance what the things that my father went through and what he had to go through with my wife. So again, I just commend you regarding being healthy and also just getting the word out regarding this. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Madam President, may I speak?
Yes, Councilmember Baker.
Mr. Stanley, I'd like to thank you for coming and sharing your story and the cause that you're pushing, because it is very important that men like myself get checked out, because you're right. It's not an old man's disease. It could pop up anytime. And so we want to be ahead of the game. And so I do commend you for what you're trying to do, because like breast cancer, it is very detrimental. My mother uh, passed away because of breast cancer. My grandmother had cancer to the lesser extent. So I'm very aware of the dangers and what it does to the body, because when my mother had it, I saw the physical change and the mental change in her from when she was diagnosed to the day she passed. So this is something that I do take very seriously. My wife, her mother passed away due to cancer. So it is something that in my household we take seriously. And I do try to tell younger men, make sure you do go to the doctor. Yeah, you can walk it off and all this other stuff, but there's some things you cannot walk off. And
Right.
you played football, so you know as well as I do. And I'm
Yes.
going to throw a little age here. When you played in the Rose Bowl, I was in 8th grade. So
Thank you for making me feel old. I appreciate it.
I remember that touchdown catch you had. So
Well, good. I'm glad you at least remember it. Well, thank you, man. And especially for, African American men, it is very important. And like I said, this health equity thing this issue that we have, I haven't quite figured out what it is and why we suffer more. But it is highly important that all men get checked. And I say get checked early, so you at least have a baseline. But African American men have to stay, because we're dying more from this disease than any other race. So take care of yourself, man.
Madam President.
Yes, Bowen, you can speak. Go ahead. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Stanley, for coming out. It became very, very personal to me when talking about cancer. A month and a half ago, my immediate neighbor, we lost her. She was 28 and had 2 young kids, and she died of breast cancer. Just next door neighbor to me. I think it's very, very, very personal. Like the kids come to our house and they talk about it. It's very hard to see they're asking for their mother every other day when they reach out to us.
Yeah.
So I think it's very important for all of us. And we brought about the man thing. I was not aware myself, because I should go and check. But my question to you, because you have been involved with these things, what does the insurance they say? Like, will they say like you have to be a certain age so that they will do the checking, or like what will they cover it, or how does that work? I don't know, because something they don't do if there is certain things are not available, or whatever things happens in between insurance and the people.
Well, insurance, they're saying not to get checked until 50. And I don't know if there's a thing with insurance that, they won't cover it until you're 50. I don't understand that scenario, which is, like I said, I'm trying to get away from the push for 50, for the push for at least 45 and maybe even 40. But I'm also with Brave Men Inc. I'm trying to raise money also, because there's some people that don't go because they're afraid of the copay that they may have, or if someone doesn't have insurance, just to be able to get them in, to help them with those finances. But 50 is the age that they say to get it, but they don't necessarily, make you get it. You have to kind of say, hey, I'd like to get this test done. You can get a PSA, which is a blood test. And then, of course, the old school finger test. You kind of get both together because the PSA, just because your PSA is high doesn't mean you have cancer, and just because it's low doesn't mean you don't have cancer. So getting the two together, I think is the best way to get the surest answer of where you are as far as your prostate health. So 50 is where they're pushing, but I'm trying to push sooner because I figure the sooner, the better.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And what kind of test is that? Is that a blood test or what kind of testing?
It's the prostate specific antigen, which is PSA, and that is a blood test. They take your blood, send it away, and they check there. And then, of course, with the finger, they just check for any hardening spots on the prostate to see if there's any lumps, anything that they can find there. Like I said, just because your PSA is high doesn't mean you you have cancer, and just because it's low doesn't mean you don't have cancer. So that's the other way. But the prostate specific antigen is the preferred way now to get your prostate checked.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other questions from anyone else on council, or any Mayor Begany or Chris Shook? Do we have any questions or comments? Well, we'd like to thank you for coming and talking to us and sharing your platform, and we will go to bravameninc.com and get further information, and we will definitely be sharing it with our families, and we will make sure that our loved ones are getting checked and make sure that we stay on top of that, because like you said, women, we oftentimes go and we have to drag our family members, our husbands along to the doctor or make appointments for them. And, you know, I have to make sure that they go, because sometimes, even when I have 3 boys and 3 sons, and sometimes I have to get them to go and make their appointments. So yes, it is important that we make and push others that we love to make sure that they're getting checked. And especially if it's something that's in your family, you definitely have to get checked sooner.
Yes, ma'am.
So we'd like to thank you for coming in this evening to speak on this important topic. Thank you, and take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye. Next, we'll have a motion to approve a resolution recognizing National Suicide Prevention Month. Councilmember Savati.
We want to read the prostate one yet?
I'm sorry, Ms. Councilmember Codner. I'm sorry, go ahead and read the resolution recognizing Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. Thank you.
Yep, sure will. Whereas approximately 191,930 men will be diagnosed with prostate cancer in the United States alone every year. That's 1 man in every 3.2 minutes, and roughly 33,330 will die this year from the disease, 87 men a day. And whereas in Ohio, an estimated 7,030 new cases of prostate cancer will be diagnosed, and an estimated 1,200 deaths will occur in 2020. And whereas men with relatives, fathers, brothers, sons with a history of prostate cancer are twice as likely to develop the disease. And whereas prostate cancer is the most commonly diagnosed cancer in America, in American men, and the 2nd leading cause of cancer death behind lung cancer. And whereas men who served in the military and were exposed to chemicals and herbicides are at a higher risk for developing prostate cancer. And whereas 1 in 9 men are diagnosed with prostate cancer in a lifetime. Overall, African American men are 1.6 times more likely to be diagnosed with prostate cancer and 2.2 times more likely to die from prostate cancer than white men. Whereas education regarding prostate cancer and early detection strategies is critical to saving lives, preserving and protecting our families, the economic and social hardship it has on families is huge. Whereas more than 3 million men in the United States are living with a prostate cancer diagnosis, that number is estimated to climb to 4 million by 2024 as men from the baby boomer generation age. And whereas all men are at risk for prostate cancer, and we encourage the citizens of Reynoldsburg to increase the importance of prostate cancer screenings. Be it resolved by the Council of the City of Reynoldsburg that this council does hereby recognize and declare the month of September as Prostate Cancer Awareness in the City of Reynoldsburg. Thank you.
Thank you. And also thank you for inviting Mr. Stanley to come this evening. I appreciate that. Are there any questions or comments from council on this resolution? May I have a motion for approval?
I'll make
I'll
a
make
motion.
the motion.
Council Member Cotner, is there a second?
I'll
second.
second.
Oh.
Council Member Baker? Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? The motion carries 7-0. Next, we will move on to a motion to approve a resolution recognizing National Suicide Prevention Month. Councilmember Savati, would you please read the motion?
Sure, it'll be my honor. We're getting lots of good homework tonight. And this should really be suicide prevention year because it's 2020. But I'll read the resolution. Whereas the week of September 6th to the 12th, 2020 is National Suicide Prevention Week, and September 2020 is National Recovery Month, when millions of people around the world join their voices to share a message of hope and healing. And whereas these observances are united in raising awareness that prevention is possible, treatment is effective, and people do recover. And whereas in these challenging times, messages of hope and healing are more needed than ever. And whereas the city of Reynoldsburg residents should be able to access high quality prevention, support, rehabilitation, and treatment services that lead to recovery and a healthy lifestyle. And whereas every day in Reynoldsburg, people enter treatment into behavioral health services and community support and begin the road to wellness and recovery. And whereas resiliency begins early in life within families, daycares, and schools, and can be strengthened and reinforced throughout the lifespan. And whereas we must encourage relatives, friends, co-workers, and providers to recognize the signs of a problem and to guide those in need to appropriate services and supports. And whereas the benefits of preventing and overcoming mental health challenges, suicide attempts and loss, and substance abuse are significant and valuable to individuals, families, and our community at large. And whereas it is essential that we educate residents about suicide, mental health, and substance abuse problems and the ways they affect all people in the community. Now, therefore, it be resolved by the Council of the City of Reynoldsburg that council does hereby recognize the week of September 6th to the 12th, 2020 as National Suicide Prevention Week and September as Suicide Prevention and Recovery Month, finding hope, building resiliency, and supporting recovery.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from council?
Yes, Madam President. Councilman Savati, thank you for bringing this resolution tonight. Just 4 weeks ago, I lost my second cousin, committed suicide. And he was only 22. And it's one of those things where you don't believe it's going to happen to your family member or someone you love or someone you just care about because we're not recognizing some of the symptoms. And so, again, this is something that we are dealing with as a family. But I just want people to know that it is real. There is hope. There are people out there that are trained to help individuals. And so that would be my plea to our community. If you see something, say something and encourage someone to get the help that they need. Because it is impacting everyone, every household. So thank you, Councilman Savati, for bringing that resolution forward because it just hit me 4 weeks ago. So thank you.
Just want to add a quick comment. if again, we continue to learn things throughout 2020, it's that reminder of how much we need community and need people. And suicide, it's one of those desperate calling out for help acts. And so hoping and finding ways to strengthen as many relationships as we can. And it ties also to what Mr. Stanley was talking about. Don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to speak up. Don't be afraid to ask for help. There's so many people willing and wanting to help those in those desperate situations. So please don't feel hopeless. There's a lot of friends nearby.
Madam President.
Thank you.
Can I speak?
Yes, Councilmember Pacquiao.
Thank you, Councilmember Salvati. I am from the Bhutanese community, and I had a challenging life back in the refugee camp with a lot of people in the community. The suicide rate in a Bhutanese community is unfortunately staggeringly very high. I don't have recent data, but in 2011, the study was done by CDC. At that time, the number of suicide in mainstream community was 10.84 for every 1,000 people. And for the Bhutanese community was 24.80 for every 1,000 people. So the number could be the same thing. Every now and then we keep on losing. But the good news is that in the last 6 or 7 months when this COVID pandemic is coming, I haven't heard anything else. Hope this will continue. But having this, people need to be, I believe that there should be awareness. More people need to talk, and hope needs to be installed in them. So I think more and more conversation needs to happen so that people will open up and the conversation, once that happens, I think the reason for dying by suicide will be reduced, which I think is that preventable. I do believe, and there's a science to back that. But problem is nobody wants to talk, and once they're gone, it's gone because we cannot go and talk to them. I think the action that we can take is bring more awareness and start talking about suicide. Not a question of shame, but it's a question of discussing and bringing this to the conversation. Thank you for bringing this up.
Thank you.
Madam.
Yes, Councilman Baker.
I just want to thank Councilman Savati for bringing this up, and that it's something that do need to be talked about, because you have kids that are committing suicide. And so this is something that the community as a whole needs to be aware and needs to talk about. It's okay to talk about it. I mean, I was brought up in the old school way of you just shrug it off and keep on moving. Well, there's some things that you can't shrug off that you need to open up about. And so I do want to commend Louis Savati, or Councilman Savati, for bringing this up. Thank you.
Do we have any other comments from council? I'd just like to add a couple of phone numbers. One is a local number for suicide prevention hotline, which is 614-221-5445. And there is also an 800 number for National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, and that is 1-800-273-8255. I'd also like to offer my condolences to Councilmember Strickland for the loss of her nephew. May I have a motion for approval of this resolution recognizing National Suicide Prevention Month?
So moved.
Councilmember Savati, may I have a second?
Second.
Councilmember Strickland. Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries 7-0.
Madam President,
Yes, please.
our communications person will put that information on the city's Facebook page tomorrow, those hotline numbers.
Thank you. Next, we'll have the reports. Will the clerk please read the clerk of court reports?
Yes, Madam President, I have the clerk of court reports for the month of July and August. For July, the clerk of court took in $24,614. And for the month of August, she received $18,535.
Item B, will the clerk please read the auditor's report?
Yes, the auditor submitted the budget by department and classification for the month of June 2020, and that is in council's packet and online.
Thank you. Item C, West Licking Fire District Report, Councilmember Baker and Township Fire.
Okay, sorry, I had to unmute myself. Yes, we had not Franklin County, Licking County Fire District Board meeting last month, and in the minutes or in the package, you'll see the stats for August, whereas the services that Reynoldsburg is getting is still a par above none, and the time and response from when the call comes in to getting to the individual that needs the help is still pretty good. I do want to announce that there's been a tentative agreement about building a new firehouse in the eastern portion of Reynoldsburg, the Licking County portion. I do have Assistant Chief Kraus here. I'll let him speak some, but I think this would be great for our area of Reynoldsburg because the whole western part of Licking County is growing. There's development happening within Reynoldsburg, yes, and also around Reynoldsburg. Amazon's building another fulfillment center in West Licking County, and there's a big development happening in Etna Township. And so to be able to build a new firehouse will let us be able to extend these services and also grow with our development, grow with our population. And so, Assistant Chief, if you're still on here, would you like to say some words?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to let Lori start first, okay?
Okay. Oh, hi, Lori.
Hi, how are you, Mr. Baker?
I'm doing good.
Good, thank you. Thank you, Council, for allowing us to have a few minutes of your time this evening. My name is Lori Mayo. I am the administrator of the West Licking Joint Fire District, which is in Pataskala. We serve 107 square miles in the Licking County area. One of those locations that we serve is the city of Reynoldsburg. And we have currently been housing our Station 4 in a temporary facility off of Taylor Road, which is a storage facility. And through exploration with Mr. Baker, we've been able to look at obtaining some property to build a permanent station for Station 404 and our guys to continue the service that we provide to your community on a more permanent basis of a home. I think AC Kraus can probably address a little bit better what this means to us. We are very thankful for this opportunity and grateful for this opportunity, and we look forward to working with the city and obtaining this new station. And I believe AC Kraus can give you guys a little bit of background as to where we have come from where we are now.
All right. Thanks, Lori. And I just want to say thanks again to the council for taking the opportunity to listen to us tonight. Just to give you a quick background, pre-2016, the average response times to the part of Reynoldsburg was anywhere from 7.5 to 8.5 minutes. It's like once we moved into that temporary facility off of Taylor Road, that dropped the response times to the community to about 4.5 to 5 minutes, well below the national average. And we continue to try to better that every year and every opportunity we get. The permanent structure is only going to be an asset for obviously the district and the community surrounding it. It's like we're excited to having the possibility of being a permanent fixture in the community and with that structure. And it's also to give us the ability to grow with the growth of the community and also the run volume that we're seeing and going to continue to see. And with the the larger permanent facility, it's like we can actually put the resources that we need into that structure to be able to service the community rather than right now we buy equipment to fit into the building that we have. So there's several opportunities with this, and it's not only going to have a huge impact for the district itself, it's going to have an impact to the surrounding communities and other fire departments and districts that also service the city of Reynoldsburg. It's like, if you have any questions or anything, I'll be happy to answer anything. I know Mr. Baker's been a strong influence and has helped us along with the mayor and several other members of the city of Reynoldsburg. It's like we greatly appreciate everything and every opportunity that we've been given so far.
Does anybody have any questions they would like to ask Luann or
Yes,
Assistant Chief?
Yes, Councilmember Baker. Thank you, Mr. Kraus, and also Ms. Mill, for everything that you all are doing. Do we have an idea of when we are planning on building Station 404? Is that going to be maybe next year or 2022? How soon are you all thinking about building the other fire station?
We are currently in the process of putting together our request for qualifications as well as our request for proposal for architects. We would anticipate the process to physically begin probably sometime early next spring, maybe probably, or in the summertime. Probably about a year or so from now is when we would anticipate probably breaking ground to have a permanent structure.
Thank you.
I have a question. When you're talking about a new station, how big of a facility are you talking about?
This is like, I can answer that one for you. It's like our ultimate goal is to be able to house possibly up to 8 people. That would be our goal, and when it comes housing, that not necessarily that's going to be what's in that station immediately, because we need to build it for the growth of the community, and as well as like it'll probably be a 3-bay station as well. It's like currently there's 2 apparatus that run out of the station 404 now, but we want to have the ability to continue to adjust to the growth and the run volume that that area has now.
Okay, have you been able to, I guess, identify any locations in Reynoldsburg for this project? Or is that just under negotiations and you haven't really gotten that far yet?
Mr. Baker, do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, we have, and I see the mayor shaking his head. I'll let him speak as well. We have found a potential spot. Negotiations are tentative, but I'll let the mayor go ahead and speak if he sure like.
Thank you, Councilman Baker. Can't even remember how long ago it was, but Councilman Baker reached out to me about the need for a firehouse in that particular area, specifically because of the size constraints and the anticipated growth. So I asked my economic development director, Andrew Bauscher, to go ahead and try and find something that fits the needs of what they were looking for, that was economical, as well as fitting in with the typical area. So it's actually going to be a little sliver of land not too far off from where they're located at right now. But it will be bringing the facility into the city of Reynoldsburg, including those 8 firefighters eventually when they do get here. Right now, basically, City Attorney Shook is going to be working on some of the framework for that proposal from our end, in conjunction with working with the fire department and all of its representatives from the legal side of everything. So I'm sure that we would have something hopefully by, I believe, October. City Attorney Shook is what you were talking about, is having something for council around that time.
Yes, we're going to need to work on a land sale agreement with the West Licking Fire District. We're going to need to prepare, obviously, a proposed deed and get an ordinance on for the agenda. Probably the first meeting of October, I think, is the earliest we could do that.
And the goal here is to keep the ball moving. We've already started. I approached Chief Majors back in February about potentially building a permanent structure for the house of our firefighters and for the growth of Reynoldsburg. And because of COVID, it kind of delayed the process about a month. But then we were able to last month go out physically, look at the sites, have productive talks about what's needed and all the details about that. So I did put something in the Reynoldsburg News Connect, so look out for that about this development coming for us. And I'm ecstatic. I'm very happy that the city of Reynoldsburg and the West Joint Licking Fire District is able to work together to build a permanent structure to Reynoldsburg, and that our services will not just stay the same but increase, as well as we're increasing out in West Licking County. So
Anytime,
anybody else have any questions?
anytime that we can work with our firefighters, be it in, Edna Township or out in Truro Township, anytime we can work with our firefighters, it's a benefit to everybody all involved. So I'm happy with the cooperation. I can't wait to see what the facility looks like.
So anybody else have anything you want to mention, say? Nope. Okay. So please keep an eye out for this. It's something that I believe will benefit Reynoldsburg and West portion of Licking County as a whole. And like I said, I'm very excited about this project and hoping to continue this ball rolling to where sometime next year, hopefully we can celebrate opening a new firehouse.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it. Anything that we can add to the safety for the citizens of Reynoldsburg would be great. Thank you for that report.
No problem. Never mind. I'll do it at the end of council.
Okay. Do we have
I was
any other?
gonna go ahead and
Did you have something to add, Councilmember Baker?
well, it wasn't a part of the report, but I was just going to go ahead and announce it now since I'm already holding the mic. Was the creation of the Mel Clemens Community of Service Award. I reached out to Director Bauman about something to honor Mr. Clemens because of his long-term service to the city of Reynoldsburg, and somebody mentioned naming the new plaza after him, but I think this one will service more. So we're creating a community service award in honor of Mel Clemens. And just to be very brief here, it's going to be October's when we're going to be asking people to submit recommendations for those who deserve this award, and we want to annually hand it out on Mel's birthday, which is in December. So it will be towards the last council meeting of the year. More details will be rolled out, but I just want to mention that since I already had the mic.
Thank you for the information. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Do we have any other comments regarding the West Licking Fire District report? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Item D, there's no Development, Parks and Recreation Committee meeting this evening. We'll be moving on to item E, Public Safety, Law and Courts Committee. Councilmember Bryant.
Thank you, President Jenkins. This is the Public Safety, Law and Courts Committee meeting for September 14th, 2020. Members in attendance are Councilmember Cotner, Councilmember Peckerell, Councilmember Lawson Rowe, Chair Bryant, and President Jenkins. First item, it's an ordinance to establish Chapter 163, Civilian Review Board for the Codified Ordinances of the City of Reynoldsburg. This ordinance stands for first reading this evening after our work session during the July 27th council meeting. Attorney Shook, do you want to go ahead and get us started with this?
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Bryant. This is the ordinance would be up for a first read this evening. It is essentially the same ordinance that was presented to council for a work session, the second meeting in July. We continued to be in contact with the Fraternal Order of Police, Capital City Lodge in Central Ohio, who represent our constituent police officers. We made some minor changes. I think, for example, we wanted to give a clearer definition as to what law enforcement background meant for one of the board members. And that's going to be defined as an individual who has at least 5 years serving in a non-civilian capacity in a law enforcement agency. We also wanted to clarify that our officers who might have to testify before the Civilian Review Board would have their garrity rights advised to them. If anybody has a question about what a garrity right is, I could probably give a more detailed explanation. The one thing I want to make clear, because I know we had a community comment about it earlier, is that, again, this ordinance is not in response to any concerns that we have about our police department. And I can tell you that based upon our productive meetings with the Fraternal Order of Police, that they have indicated their 100% support behind what we are doing here. In fact, I was talking with the vice president of the Fraternal Order of Police, and he indicated that he will probably be here for the council meeting where you vote on this particular ordinance to express verbally his support for this Civilian Review Board. In addition, I would note that former mayor of Columbus, Greg Lasheka, gave a press conference recently where he praised the process that we've had for the creation of this board and our cooperation and involvement with the Fraternal Order of Police. I would ask council to move this on for a first reading tonight.
Thank you, Attorney Shook. Although we haven't had, fortunately, we haven't had any incidents in Reynoldsburg that, required press coverage. We do have a legacy of having a police department with a bad reputation historically. If you look back to the 1990s, there was a federal case, Murphy versus Reynoldsburg, that brought up the presence of a group that they referred to as SNAT, which was Special N-Word Arrest Team. That's a legacy that we need to put behind us. I think the more transparency that we can offer to our public, to our constituents, to our residents, to visitors, is we need to be proactive in this area. Just because something hasn't happened that required administrative leaves and that sort of thing does not mean that there are no issues. I've had, reports of driving while black, jogging while black, walking while black. Not to mention that we see far more black and brown people present on mayor's court days in City Hall. That may or may not be representative of a problem, but it doesn't look good. And so given our past, I think we need to move forward with this, this review board. And are there any other questions or comments from the committee on this legislation? Yes, Councilman Cotner.
I'm glad it's a first reading and we have some time to make sure that some of this is going to be executed the right way. We are all civilians elected to represent our community and oversee and make sure that things are also being done the right way. So I think we want to be very aware of what we're doing and make sure that there is support and the right action going in. So again, I'm glad that it's a discussion. I'm glad we're discussing it, not out of desperation. And I am thankful for the officers that we have. I am thankful for Chief Plessick and the efforts that he was making to intentionally create a more diverse police force in our community. I think that was an effort that he was trying to recruit the best and trying to have our police force represent in a more diverse look our community. And I think that passing on to Chief Baker, we have the same concept. We have someone who very much respects the law, very much respects our officers, and wants to work with our community. So I think that, you know, everything is always good to discuss and make sure that we are proactive and moving the correct way. Mistakes from the past can never be excused. Some of the things that did happen, but where we are currently and where I see that our police force is going, I'm very thankful for them and thankful for the service that they are providing to our community, and look forward to, again, Chief Baker's views and his team as we continue to move forward with this and as a community. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Cotner. Does anybody else have any questions or comments?
Yeah.
Yes, Councilmember Pacquiao.
Okay. Yes, this is a first reading. Definitely, I went through these things, and I believe that we do need this thing. And in the meantime, my staying in Reynoldsburg is not that long, but work with the Reynolds police very closely for the last several years. I still miss Officer Hines, who was coming into the community and hugging my kids whenever they see any police officer and any police car. They say Officer Hines. So he's no more working with the Reynoldsburg police still, but still our kids remember that. A lot of kids in the community, they do remember that. I do believe that some of the police officers who reflect the community and reflect the values are still there in our city, in city force. At the same time, this civilian review board will help enhance the policing in the community. So definitely we need to look through it, and hopefully next few sittings will come with more discussion and come out with a good ordinance or law to help our police and the community.
Thank you, Member Pacquiao. Any other questions, comments from the council?
Mayor Baggany, did you have comment?
Briefly, after speaking many times over the last few months with Chief Baker about this, you know, we understand that there's always issues with perceptions. And one of the things that we plan on addressing with RPD is the perception that may be out there amongst some of our community members with a number of initiatives that are outside of the scope specifically of the Civilian Review Board, but that is a part of it. Again, perceptions can play a significant role in there, but just to be blunt, Chief Baker's door has always been open. His phone is always ready to ring, and he will talk not only with council members, but with myself as well as members of the community about anything. He's not afraid of the tough questions, and that's what I admire about Chief Baker. And he is exactly the right person to lead us into anything that comes into the future with challenges that may be facing the city of Reynoldsburg. And with him, those RPD officers out there are right there lockstep with it. So I appreciate their support in this as we move forward with the Civilian Review Board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Begany. Any other? Council Member Salvati?
I just wanted to make a quick comment. I had a real brief conversation with Attorney Shook this weekend. And one of the things I love about this committee is if what the citizen who addressed us earlier said is true, then this committee will do nothing. This committee is not seeking, it will be reacting to issues. So if there are no issues, then the committee will sit there and do nothing. If there are issues, I like the fact that they're there if an issue comes up. So I like the idea that this committee is there, but this committee will not be hunting for anything. This committee will simply be called upon if something should come up that needs to be addressed. So I hope the committee goes through, and I hope they do nothing. So.
Thank you, Council Member Salvati. Any other questions, comments?
Yes, Chairwoman, this is Councilwoman Meredith Lawson Rowe. I just would like to piggyback on what Councilman Salvati said in terms of it would be a good problem if our committee, if this review board, if it does come to fruition, not have to review any type of discriminatory challenges. And I also like the the point you made in terms of being transparent. So when I was sitting on the other side of council in the audience and actually knocking doors and meeting neighbors, one of my big platforms is relationships. And that's not something that I say, and it's not something that I make up. As a matter of fact, our community relations officers are absolutely fantastic. I have a relationship with them. Officer King and Officer Marshall are here in the community, and they respond to calls, texts, and they're wonderful. And I appreciate their support. I appreciate their relationship, and they want to know us in the community so that whenever we call them, we're not strangers to them and they aren't strangers to us. So keep it up, Reynoldsburg. Let's keep being transparent, and let's keep having this conversation. And I'm here for it all. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member Lawson Rowe. Any other questions or comments?
I'd like to make a comment, Chairman Bryant.
Yes.
First of all, I want to say thank you for bringing this up to council. I think it will do wonderful things. And I agree with Councilman Savati. The best course of action for this committee is to do nothing. I hope it doesn't have to do anything. That means we're doing something right on the other end. And Chief Baker, if you're listening, thank you for getting on board. I've seen you out in the community and we've had discussions. And I like to say thank you for taking that step in the right direction with us to let everybody know that, yeah, there's some problems out there, but not everybody is part of that problem. And so I just want to say I look forward to this board, and I do think it is the right thing to do.
Thank you, Council Member Baker. Anyone else? Okay, I would just like to thank City Attorney Shook and his intern DePisha for spending so much valuable time on this, putting it together very conscientiously, and not only taking the time to put it together that way, but also to take the time to consult with the FOP so that we can make sure that this is something that we get right. Just going back a little bit to just a few short years ago when we had Police Chief O'Neill, he's had made a comment about within the last year of his tenure that there's a lot of similarities between Ferguson, Missouri and Reynoldsburg, Ohio in terms of the demographics, population, not just the demographics of residents and visitors, but also the demographics of the police department. I was very pleased to find out just a few months ago we have 9 women as officers in RPD. I know we're working on having more minorities. And I would dearly love to see a member of the Bhutanese community step up and decide that they would like to, work with RPD as an officer. I think that would be extremely valuable. But with that, I'm going to say let's move this ordinance to council for first reading. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Council Member Baker.
Oh, wait a minute, I can't count. I'm not on your committee. I'm sorry.
I second.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Council Member Pecoro. All right, so I'm going to forward that to council. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries. And this ordinance will be forwarded to council for first reading. Next item on our agenda is an ordinance appropriating funds from the unappropriated general fund to the police department for donated monies. Do we have Chief Baker with us here tonight? Molly, I see you. Oh, there he is. Hello, Chief.
I think I got it.
All right.
Good evening. First thing will be a $500 donation that was made from James Reed from State Farm. It's in the general fund, and we would like it allocated to the law enforcement supplies.
Okay, are there any questions or comments from the committee on this legislation? Nobody? Any questions from council?
Sure, this ain't from Jake from State Farm. I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself. I had to ask that one.
James Reed.
All right, I move that we forward this ordinance to council for first reading. Is there a second from somebody on the committee?
Second.
Seconded, Council Member Lawson Rowe. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries. This ordinance will be forwarded to council for its first reading. Next on the agenda is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to purchase radios for the police department and waive competitive bidding. Chief Baker, anything for us on this?
This is just a replacement issue. We have 20 Motorola radios that are no longer supported or repaired by Motorola. They're not fit for issuance of patrol officers, not reliable. So we are in the process of replacing those items to make sure our radios are sufficient for our patrol officers.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. Are there any questions from the committee? Any questions or comments from council? I move that we forward this ordinance to council for its first reading. Do we have a second?
A second.
Seconded by Council Member Peckrell. Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries. This ordinance will be forwarded to council for a first reading. Next item on the agenda is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to purchase body cameras for the emergency or for the police department, waive competitive bidding and declaring an emergency. Chief Baker.
We are requesting money be allocated for some more body worn cameras. As you know, last year we came before council and obtained funding for 52 body worn cameras from a company called Custom. Custom was our vendor for our cruiser cameras. We've had good luck with them, and as far as the functioning of those cameras, and so that's why we went with this vendor for body worn cameras. Shortly after getting those body worn cameras, we have seen many issues with those BWCs. They have not been reliable for us. Many of the issues have revolved around the internal battery and software that Custom has not been able to fix or address for us. We have documented many of these problems. We have sent that documentation to the city attorney, but we do not feel that those body cameras are reliable. Many of you have seen the BWC camera footage when it's working. It's very good. We like the body worn cameras. Our officers have come to like those cameras. So we feel it's very important that we maintain that program. We just need a more reliable vendor that we can go to and have confidence that those BWCs are going to work when we deploy them. So we are asking for funds to be appropriated to cover the cost of 19 body worn cameras and 6 cruiser cameras. With that, those 6 cruiser cameras, that also includes a body worn camera. So we'll get 6 cruiser cameras and 25 total body worn cameras.
Thank you, Chief. So the reliability issue was with the first set that we got, and then we came back and ordered more. Was the replacements, how many did we replace at that point?
So as you know, this program was in place just prior to my arrival. I'm aware of a purchase of 52 total body worn cameras from Custom. Pretty much within the first month, we started having problems. We'll have problems mostly concerning the internal batteries. Up until this point, all vendors of body worn cameras had an internal battery. And if you look at different vendors, that was a common problem with these BWCs, but even more so with Custom. The new BWCs that we're going to get from WatchGuard actually have a removable battery. So one of the common problems we had from our BWCs with Custom is that battery would expand and pretty much pop the casing of the BWC, which is obviously a dangerous situation. Also, the body camera battery would go low, and it wouldn't allow the video to upload into our system. And there was no indication of when that battery was at that point. So we've had many problems with these cameras. I'm not aware of a second purchase with these cameras. I know when I came here, we had 52, and we've had problems with these cameras throughout this purchase. We would expect a body worn camera from the research that we did and with talking with WatchGuard to have a shelf life of about 5 years. And we're about, as you know, about a year and a half in with these body cams, and we've had problems with them really since the first month. We've had issues where we've sent body cameras back and we've received some in return, and the ones that we have received in return immediately would not function. So it's really been upsetting to us that we haven't had a reliable product.
Yeah, that is upsetting. Has anybody contacted the company to see like if there's been any recalls where they'll make the repairs in the way, you know, like if you get a recall notice on your car's brakes, anything like that that we're aware of that we can push them on?
I'm not aware of any recalls. We have been in constant communication with the company. They actually sent a service person out to our agency for 2 days, and he wasn't able to get the issues fully resolved. So we have documented many of the issues and provided those issues to Attorney Shook.
Thank you, Chief. And I assume that you've received good reviews on the replacement proposed in terms of durability and.
Yeah, we have Columbus PD uses WatchGuard, Whitehall PD uses WatchGuard, Dublin PD uses WatchGuard. We reached out to each of these agencies, both at the command level and at the user end with patrol officers, and they have had good reviews. One of the main things that we were looking for in BWCs is, again, that removable battery. As you know, batteries go bad, but like with our portable radios, if your battery goes bad, you go in, you swap out your battery, you put it back in, and it's functioning again. With BWCs with internal batteries, when that occurs, you have to actually dock that and recharge that battery. And with Customs, that has been taking several hours to recharge the battery. And then it does not appear that it's getting a full recharge. So those BWCs that we receive from Custom often do not last an 8-hour shift.
Wow. Yeah, that's not good. And I'm sorry your officers have been working with that. That is not a good way to be out there. Do we have any other questions or comments from council?
I do have a comment, Councilmember Ryan. So thank you again, Chief Baker, for everything you do, and RPD. I really, truly appreciate you all. I know that last year or a year and a half ago, we purchased, you said 52. But right now, it seems as though we're only purchasing 19, and 6 of them will be included within the cruiser. Do we feel like we have enough body cameras to suffice? Or again, I'm just trying to understand that numbering, because that would be total, I believe you said 25 total of the new body cameras versus the 52 before. So I'm just trying to see what's the huge difference there.
So great question, council member. One of the other advantages that I failed to tell you about with these with these watch guard cameras, they're interchangeable with officers. So I'll tell you how our custom system works. They are issued and assigned to each individual officer, and their information is plugged into that specific unit. So we issue each officer their separate body cam, and if somebody else uses that, it'll have the other officer's name programmed into that. So if you're doing a search and you're wearing somebody else's body cam, it's not going to show your identifiers in the software. WatchGuard allows any user to pick up a body-worn camera. They enter the device in the computer, and that will automatically assign that device to that officer. So they're more universal in use. Now, I would expect us to eventually try to get to around 50 body-worn cameras. And then a maintenance type schedule would be 10 body cameras a year to maintain a 5-year shelf life for those body-worn cameras. So this 25, I think, will be sufficient because we probably will be able to use the old custom ones that work for another year. And then I would expect to come back from council next year and hopefully get that number up to the 50 that we need.
Thank you. Also, Attorney Shook, so it sounds as though, you know, we were, for some reason, all of the previous body cameras was not operating, or the battery life didn't last that long. Are we going to be contacting, I guess, to the prior vendor regarding if there's any reimbursement or anything like that?
Council member Strickland, I don't want to go into too much detail, but I can tell you that we are looking at every legal option, and we have full intention of enforcing our contract with that company.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council?
Oh, because she took my question.
I did want to ask Chief Baker, is the reason for the legislation being emergency, is that just to get them in faster, I presume?
Yeah, I mean, we have found these BWCs to be essential to our operations. We want to get our activities documented. We need them for transparency. And when those are not available, it really worries me. I want the BWCs, I want the transparency, and we need the reliability of these BWCs. Again, our officers, while any new technology that we subject them to makes them a little nervous, they have really come to accept those BWCs, and they rely on them for documentation.
Thank you, Chief. And then just generally speaking on the record, Attorney Shook, we had this item and the previous item listed as competitive bidding waived. If you could just, for the record, so that people in the audience understand why that is and the reasons for waiving the competitive bid.
Yes, so under codified ordinance 175.01 subsection F, competitive bidding can be waived if a product is purchased for a price that is equal to or less than a state bid price. So the state of Ohio will have certain contracts that they have already bid out, and they have already identified the lowest and best bidder. For the products that we are purchasing on the last 2 ordinances, both products are listed on the state bid list, and our purchase price under both ordinances is less than the state bid price.
Thank you, Counselor. Do we have any other questions or comments?
I just
Okay,
have
yes.
just one quick question. Do we have any future plans for hiring any other officers where we need to buy extra body cameras? Just
No, the body cams that we're requesting will serve our immediate needs because they are interchangeable, and we will have enough the customs to kind of get us through to next year. So the problem with these customs BWCs is we're losing them faster than we can get them back. So they're just not reliable, but I believe these 25 will be sufficient for these years because of the interchangeability of the units.
okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Chief Baker, for answering all of our questions. I move that we forward this ordinance to council for its first reading. Do I have a second?
Okay.
Seconded by Council Member Peccarell. Do we have any discussion, any further discussion? No, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. As this ordinance will be forwarded to council for its first reading. And as there is no further business before the Public Safety Law and Courts Committee, I return the meeting to President Jenkins.
Thank you. The next report will come from our Public Service and Transportation Committee. Councilmember Strickland.
Thank you, Madam President. This is the Public Service and Transportation Committee meeting for September the 14th, 2020. Members in attendance are Councilmember Cotner, Councilmember Pacquiao, Councilmember Lawson Rowe, Chair Strickland, and President Jenkins. Item number 1, an ordinance to amend Chapter 1711 nuisance and property maintenance of the codified ordinance of the City of Reynoldsburg. First reading was on July the 27th, 2020. This ordinance was before council for a second reading and an amendment. Attorney Schiff, would you like to say anything regarding this legislation?
Yes, Councilmember Strickland. There is no need for an amendment to this legislation this evening. This is the same ordinance that was presented to council back in July. We are looking to broaden our definition of who it is can be cited under our property maintenance code and to increase the financial penalties associated with those violations. I can tell you that between second and third read, I anticipate putting in additional language that would give the city more power to be able to pursue civil action for property maintenance violations, place liens on properties, and give the city more power to be able to foreclose when those financial penalties are not paid. So we are still looking to make some changes between second and third read, but at this time I would ask that council move this on for a second read this evening.
Thank you, Attorney Schiff. Are there any questions or comments from the committee on this legislation? Are there any comments from the council? I move we forward this ordinance to council for a second reading. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Lawson Rowe. Any other further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. This ordinance will be forwarded to council for a second reading. Item number 2, an ordinance authorizing the clerk of council to certify nuisance calls 2019 for collection by the Franklin County Auditor. Director Dorman, are you still out there?
I am. Yes, I'm here.
Can you talk a little bit more about this particular ordinance?
I'm sorry, that's the ordinance for the assessments, I believe. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, that is the assessment that we charge when we have to go out and do property maintenance and residents, for instance, on mowing grass and other various items on code enforcement. When the residents do not pay that, then we basically send that down to the auditor and certify those funds and have that as an assessment put on their tax bill. And that's typical business that we do throughout the year.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Any questions from council? I move we forward this ordinance to council for a first reading. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Lawson Rowe. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. This ordinance will be forwarded to council for a first reading. Item number 3, an ordinance authorizing the clerk of council to certify nuisance costs 2019 for collection by the Lincoln County Auditor. Director Dorman, would you like to say a couple things about this?
Same thing. I think the one we read before, I believe, was Franklin, and this one is Licking. So it's just, obviously, everyone knows we touch 3 different counties, so each one has to be handled appropriately and sent to the proper jurisdiction for assessments.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? From council? I move we forward this ordinance to council for a first reading. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Paparel. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. This ordinance will be forwarded to council for a first reading. Item number 4, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with ODOT for guardrail repairs on 256 within the city of Reynoldsburg. Director Dorman.
Yeah, so it's kind of an odd request here, but ODOT, typically we do these just with a normal kind of written agreement, but ODOT asked us to do this through an ordinance. It just allows them to do the repairs. There's a small little section of 256 past the 5 corners there that has a section of guardrail that ODOT is responsible for. They're responsible for that bridge and the guardrail, and they would like to do repairs on the guardrail. There's no cost to the city. This basically just gives them permission to go ahead and do the work.
When are they planning on starting that work? Do you know?
I think soon, because they asked us to pass this to be an emergency, but we didn't need to because we'd have it passed prior to the date they asked.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm guessing you'll see them do this. This is the kind of work they can do in the winter as long as it's not, lots of snow on the ground and the ground's not too frozen. So I'm guessing this will be done, late winter, early spring.
Thank you, Director Dorman. Are there any questions or comments from the committee?
I have a question, Chairwoman. I remember there was some sort of discussion, and Councilmember Bryant, chime in, please. I remember that there was a discussion from a neighbor that I think is in a wheelchair and spoke about the need for sidewalk continuing. Is that the same area?
You're talking about Graham Road and the 5-way intersection.
So is this the same intersection where we're talking about with the guardrail?
It is not. It is one street system.
Yeah,
Very
unfortunately,
close.
I think we've got more than
It's the same creek. It's just a different road.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions from council? I move we forward this ordinance to council for a first reading. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Lawson Rowe. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. This ordinance will be forwarded to council for a first reading. Item number 5, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with the EMHT for engineering plans and preparations of bid documents for the 2021 Street Improvement Program and appropriating funds therefore. Director Dorman, would you like to say a couple things about this particular ordinance?
Sure. So EMHD, as everyone knows, has been the city engineer for many, many years. The past 2 years, I think, well, at least definitely last year, the city was fortunate enough to go out with our street program early to get everything designed and ready. So come first of the year, we could go out and bid it and get it kind of ahead of the curve. It's, you know, fairly competitive. There's only so many contractors in town, and it's really advantageous to get your bids out there first to get, you know, contractors secured and get pricing, the best pricing you can. And every project we bid out last year, we had bids that were well under the engineer's estimate. We saved, you know, quite a bit of money. Plus, the good thing about that too is the projects actually get done before the end of the year. You know, we all drive around and see these projects that just kind of linger, but like Davidson Road's done now. We're going to be finishing up the residential streets and the work we're doing on Main Street here, hopefully in the next couple weeks. And you know, that's one big thing about that. So this is what this will basically authorize EMH&T to begin the design work on that, and then we'll be ready to go out to bid and get a head start, hopefully, and get some good prices.
Thank
and
you.
within that, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think within there too, and we've talked about this. I know it's sent some emails out, and I've corresponded to Councilman Pacquiao and I believe Meredith and a few others regarding sidewalks. You know, the city, as we increase code enforcement, you know, people are aware we're out there. They're actually seeing that we're doing things. So we're getting a lot of calls saying, "Hey, this has been an issue. Can you come out and finally look at this and see what we can do about this?" So the city would like to start, you know, a sidewalk program this coming year. And I think I sent a blurb out to several council members, just talking about just some basic ideas that we have. I think the biggest thing is, as we just mentioned, as Councilmember Bryant mentioned earlier, was that there's some missing gaps within the city. Those would require obviously considerably more dollars than just replacing a sidewalk panel. Because it involves a little more engineering and some things like that. Typically, if we have gaps in the city, it's because those are the challenging areas, and those are always ones that are a little more costly in the end to do. So we want to look at some of those areas throughout the city, but we also want to look at, every time we do a residential street or a street in the city, we want to look at the sidewalks on that street too, and do an inspection and see what needs to be fixed. It's really advantageous to be out there doing that kind of work at the same time, because we already have a contractor that's doing concrete work, so we're going to get a very competitive price when doing it. So.
Thank you, Director Dorman. Are there any questions from the committee?
Chairwoman, I don't have a question. I just would like to acknowledge Mr. Dorman and Mr. Bowser. I'd like to thank you both for responding to my emails, my questions, and helping to get me smart in this area. I have not really leaned into this conversation because every time we hear about sidewalks, I think it's always the other side of town. Well, I've been out doing my ward walkabouts, and I plan to walk the entire part of my ward. And I had a neighbor to reach out to me, and she's very concerned about her street, Retton, and just off of Bryce, all the way up to Rygate, where there are no sidewalks. And her kids and other neighborhood kids have to walk to the bus stop. And just as we heard earlier from another neighbor, Miss Jen, that this is a concern. And we'll just have to continue to lift up these concerns that we're hearing from our neighbors. And my granddaughter and I actually walked up Retton Road, and we've actually, you know, visited neighbors on that part of Retton Road. And it's different because the other part of Retton Road has sidewalks, except this very far west end. So I just wanted to bring up this concern that we have a neighbor that has a concern about sidewalks, and I appreciate Mr. Dorman actually sharing the details and how we're looking to reintroduce this street program. So I want to thank him and Mr. Mayor. We have to stay on that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. One other thing I did want to mention too is that as development comes in, if there's a development opportunity that happens and it's on a parcel or a piece of property that does not have sidewalk, part of the regulations they will have to install sidewalk and connect pieces. So that way the burden's not put on the city. So as we see some of these developments come in, we talked about it with the Taylor Road condos that are kind of under construction right now. We need to maybe widen that or do things, and we're still looking at that. But that's one thing, it's very important too, is so we're not taking all the burden on. If a developer comes in, it's their responsibility to fill in those gaps as they develop those pieces as well.
Councilmember Pacriel.
Yes, thank you. So thank you, Director Dorman, for even responding to my email as well. So what happened was, like, few residents, they call me and I bike around in my ward, like figuring out what is the situation there. The concern they called me was the trees are planted, I don't know, either by resident or by city, and those trees, when the tree grows up, the sidewalks are lifted, and there's a hazard for like walking or biking, kind of difficult situation happened. And there are multiple people, they brought a concern that I don't know what is right or what is wrong, but they claim that the trees were planted by city. And after talking with some of the council member, I found that some of those trees were not planted by city or by the developer or whatever it may be. But I would like to know, like, if they have to fix by themselves or whether the city will jump in and fix it. At least I just want to give that answer to the residents who asked me. And some of them called multiple times because during my election time, I told them, hey, we will be fixing the sidewalks and road and street, and say, now is the time, what are you doing? So I just wanted to give them a right answer. Yes, this is your responsibility or the city's responsibilities. Just I want to make sure that I give them the right answer. So just wanted to move forward with that.
Yeah, and we talk about that a lot in the city. If there's an HOA that's present within a subdivision, they do have some rules and regulations. The one thing about Reynoldsburg is actually we are not responsible for any of the city trees unless they're fronting our property. So, for instance, City Hall, Parkway, anything that would be the frontage of a city-owned property, we are responsible for those trees. Anything you see outside of that along the subdivision or anywhere else, those are the residents' responsibility, or if there's an active HOA, sometimes it falls under the HOA. That money that they put in there for every year to the HOA can be used for replacements. But no, unfortunately, so if there's an issue where the roots have heaved the sidewalk or caused others to kind of settle as they died, that is the responsibility of the homeowner to do. Now, we can provide them some guidance. You don't always have to replace the sidewalk panel. In the cities I've worked for in the past, we did that a lot, and it became very expensive, and it wasn't really the solution because the tree roots would continue to grow, and the sidewalk panel 3 years later would be doing the same thing. There's something called slab jacking, where you drill a couple small holes in the sidewalk panel and you inject it with concrete or slurry, and it lifts the panel. It's very cheap, and it fixes the sidewalk very fast and very cheap. But it works. And there's also, you can shave the sidewalk. They have a saw that basically sits on the sidewalk and it'll kind of shave off that edge or that lip that's there. Those are both accepted practices that people can use. We do ask them, if they're doing that kind of work, to let us know. We do like to go out and inspect it and see what they're doing. We want to make sure that it's done well and they're getting a good product in the end as well, because for us, it's very important that no one trips or falls as they're walking down the walk.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Director Dorman?
No comment. I'd like to say thank you for addressing this.
Councilwoman Strickland, if I could add a little bit to that.
Yes, Mr. Bowser.
Thank you, Councilwoman Strickland. Mr. Dorman gave a really good briefing of the existing problems that we have currently with the sidewalks and obviously the trees. And something that we've kind of proud ourselves on moving forward is when we take a look at new development, we need to make sure that we're taking a look at that landscaping from those development companies and what they're utilizing. So when MI goes in to build their new housing complex, we'll be taking a look very closely at the spacing of these trees, how close they are to the sidewalks, the type of species that they're using. Many times in the past, to our detriment, now that we're seeing it, they've used builder grade trees or trees that had really terrible root systems. So moving forward, we're only going to select native species and species that have deep growing roots that won't affect the sidewalk systems as they have in the past. So it's something that we're just trying to put our best foot forward and be a little bit more progressive and a little bit more forward thinking when we do allow some of these developments, so we don't have the same problems that we're plagued with currently from the past.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I was going to say a comment, but then my computer froze. But just real quick, I'd just like to say thank you to Director Dorman for addressing this, because my first year on council, I've said it then, I'll say it now. There should be no rhyme or reason why there's no sidewalks in the city of Reynoldsburg anywhere. So I'm glad that we're taking a hard stance to addressing this. So thank you.
All right. So again, thank you, Mr. Bowger and Director Dorman. My only ask would be, as we move forward and with the planning, that we would notify our neighborhoods, our neighbors, regarding which streets, which sidewalks that we will be working on. I would like to get into the habit of, being able to post which streets are going to be next. And so we can at least try to plan accordingly and letting our neighbors know we are aware, this is where you are in the pipeline. I know I talked to our mayor about that. So that's one thing that I would love to have on our website regarding when streets and sidewalks will be prepared.
Point taken. Good point. Yes, I agree.
All right. I move forward this ordinance to council for a first reading. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Pacquiao. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. This ordinance will be forwarded to council for a first reading. Item number 6, an ordinance to transfer funds from the unencumbered general fund to various building department accounts and declaring an emergency. Director Dorman.
Yeah, so this is a good and bad problem to have at times. It's a good problem because we are building a lot and we're doing a lot more code enforcement. The bad problem is that we just unfortunately didn't budget enough money at the beginning of the year to cover this. So these are just basic costs. These are what we have to pay our chief building official to review building plans, as well as our consultants. And it's also the other additional monies are a direct result of code enforcement and building department. So many permits are going out that we're needing to get more copies made, and we're running more copies off the copier. We're sending certified letters to all these corporations and businesses when we're doing code violations, as we're actually doing citations and bringing them into mayor's court. A lot more cost than we've ever done in the past, and just going through that process. So once again, this is just going to get us through the end of the year. When we do the budget for 2021, we'll obviously look at these numbers. But like I said, it's a good problem because it means we're getting lots of people doing renovations, as we know, because of COVID. A lot of people putting fences in, doing remodeling, doing deck work, but also just pure development. Such, for instance, the condominiums out of Taylor, that's 96 units, and those each require several dozen inspections apiece. So this is just planning ahead for that. We know we're going to be short. We're coming to you in advance. We're seeing that shortfall, so we're coming to you now, knowing what we're going to need.
Thank you, Director Dorman. Are there any questions from council? I'm sorry, from the committee? Any from council? All right. I move we forward this ordinance to council for a first reading. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Lawson Rowe. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. This ordinance will be forwarded to council for a first reading. As there is no further business for the Public Service and Transportation Committee, I return this meeting back over to President Jenkins. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to the next report, which is Finance and Administration Committee. Councilmember Savati.
Thank you, President Jenkins. This is the Finance and Administration Committee meeting for September 14th, 2020. Members in attendance are Council Members Baker, Councilmember Bryant, Councilmember Strickland, myself, and President Jenkins. First item is a resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the Franklin County Auditor and declaring an emergency. Auditor Sisak has waited patiently for his moment, and this is it.
Thank you, Chairman Salvati, President Jenkins, and members of council. June 22nd, you passed the resolution and we had our public hearing regarding these budgets for Franklin County and for Licking County and for Fairfield County. This is an annual part of the budget process, and I'd like to bring your attention. I don't know if you went deep into that page, but if you look here for this page, you'll see what the property taxes are that we receive for the city from Franklin County, and it's just under $500,000. The Board of Health, the Board of Elections, they charge more than what we bring in from Franklin County. So it's very important that I wanted to bring that to your attention. Either way, the resolution was passed by the county and their signatures are on it, and this is here for you to consider tonight.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the committee on this legislation? All right, from council? Okay, well, I move to forward this ordinance to council for first reading. Do I have a second? Second by Councilmember Strickland. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right, this ordinance will be forwarded to council for first reading. All right, second item on the agenda is a resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the Licking County Auditor and declaring an emergency. Anything you want to add about Licking County Auditor?
Chairman Salvati and President Jenkins, members of council, I'd like you to bring your attention also to this page in your packet, and it'll show you what we've produced as far as property tax revenue for the city. It's $145,000, $210. These are just figures that I wanted to bring to your attention, and if there's any other questions, feel free to call me during the week.
Thank you. We appreciate that, and we will do so. Any discussion from the committee on this legislation? From council? All right, I will move. We forward this ordinance to council for its first reading. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilmember Bryant. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, that motion carries, and this ordinance will be forwarded to council for its first reading. And the third item is an ordinance to approve and authorize the execution and delivery of Amendment Number 3 of Joint Economic Development District Contract Number 1 between Etna Township and the City of Reynoldsburg, Ohio, and declaring an emergency. Attorney Shook.
Yes, Councilmember Salvati, thank you. This is very similar to what we did with JED 2 back in July. So this would be the third amendment to JED 1. I would note that this does not add or subtract any territory to JED 1, so it does not require a public hearing. There is a development on 113 plus acres at the southeast corner of Refugee and Mink. In order to facilitate that development, Etna Township negotiated with the Southwest Licking School District to obtain a tax abatement for this development. In order to convince the school district to sign off on that abatement, the school district has requested a change to the distribution percentages in this particular JED. This is presented to you as an emergency because we just found out about this in August, and the development is ready to go as soon as the mayor is able to sign the development and compensation agreement.
Thank you, Attorney. Any questions from the committee on this legislation? From the rest of council? Okay. I move to forward this ordinance to council for its first reading. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, second by Councilmember Strickland. Any final discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, this ordinance will be forwarded to council for its first reading. And that concludes the business for the Finance and Administration Committee. So I return the meeting to President Jenkins.
Thank you. We'll be moving on to item 10 on the agenda, which is legislation for first reading. Would the clerk please read items 10A?
An ordinance to establish Chapter 163 Civilian Review Board for the codified ordinances of the City of Reynoldsburg.
Councilmember Bryant.
Thank you, President Jenkins. This item comes from the Public Safety, Law and Courts Committee. I'd like this ordinance to stand for its first reading, return to council on our next meeting at September 28th.
Unless there's any questions or comments, this ordinance will stand for the first reading and return to council on September 28th. Would the clerk please read item 10B?
An ordinance appropriating funds from the unappropriated general fund to the police department for donated monies.
Councilmember Bryant.
Thank you, President Jenkins. This item comes from the Public Safety, Law and Courts Committee. I'd like this ordinance to stand for a first reading and return to council on September 28th.
Unless there's no other questions or comments, this ordinance will stand for a first reading and return to council for September 28th meeting. Would the clerk please read item 10D?
An ordinance authorizing the mayor to purchase body cameras for the police department, waive competitive bidding, and declaring an emergency.
Councilmember Bryant.
Thank you, President Jenkins. This item comes from a Public Safety, Law and Courts Committee. I would like this ordinance to stand for a first reading and return to council on September 28th.
Unless there's no questions or comments, this ordinance will stand for a first reading and return to council for the September 28th, 2020 meeting. Would the clerk please read item 10E?
An ordinance authorizing the clerk of council to certify nuisance costs 2019 for collection by the Franklin County Auditor.
Councilmember Strickland.
Yes, President Jenkins, this item comes from the Public Service and Transportation Committee. I would like this ordinance to stand for a first reading and return to September 28th, 2020 council meeting.
Unless there are any questions or comments, this ordinance will stand for a first reading and return to council for the September 28th, 2020 meeting. Would the clerk please read item 10F?
An ordinance authorizing the clerk of council to certify nuisance costs 2019 for collection by the Licking County Auditor.
Councilmember Strickland.
President Jenkins, this item comes from the Public Service and Transportation Committee. I would like this ordinance to stand for a first reading and return to the September 28th, 2020 council meeting.
Unless there are any questions or comments, this ordinance will stand for the first reading and return to council for the September 28th, 2020 meeting. Would the clerk please read item 10G?
An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with ODOT for guardrail repairs on State Route 256 within the city of Reynoldsburg.
Councilmember Strickland.
Yes, thank you. President Jenkins, this item comes from the Public Service and Transportation Committee. I would like this ordinance to stand for a first reading and return to the September 28th, 2020 council meeting.
Unless there are any questions or comments, this ordinance will stand for a first reading and return to council for September 28th, 2020 meeting. Would the clerk please read item 10H?
An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with EMH&T for the engineering plans and preparation of bid documents for the 2021 street improvement program and appropriating funds therefore.
Councilmember Strickland.
President Jenkins, this item comes from the Public Service and Transportation Committee, and I would like this ordinance to stand for a first reading and return to the September 28, 2020 council meeting.
Unless there are questions or comments, this ordinance will stand for a first reading and return to council for the September 28, 2020 meeting. Would the clerk please read items 10I?
An ordinance to transfer funds from the unencumbered general fund to various building department accounts and declaring an emergency.
Councilmember Strickland.
Thank you, President Jenkins. This item comes from the Public Service and Transportation Committee. I would like this ordinance to stand for a first reading and return to the September 28, 2020 council meeting.
Unless there are questions or comments, this ordinance will stand for a first reading and return to council for the September 28, 2020 meeting. Would the clerk please read item 10J?
A resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the Franklin County Auditor and declaring an emergency.
Councilmember Savati.
Thank you, President Jenkins. This item comes from the Finance and Administration Committee. I'd like this ordinance to stand for its first reading and return to the September 28th, 2020 council meeting.
Unless there are questions or comments, this ordinance will stand for a first reading and return for the September 28, 2020 meeting. Would the clerk please read items 10K?
A resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the Licking County Auditor and declaring an emergency.
Councilmember Savati.
Thank you, President Jenkins. This item also comes from the Finance and Administration Committee. I'd like this ordinance to stand for its first reading and return to the September 28th, 2020 council meeting.
Unless there are questions or comments, this ordinance will stand for a first reading and return to council for the September 28, 2020 meeting. Would the clerk please read items 10L?
An ordinance to approve and authorize the execution and delivery of Amendment Number 3 of the Joint Economic Development District Contract Number 1 between Etna Township and the City of Reynoldsburg, Ohio, and declaring an emergency.
Councilmember Savati.
Thank you, President Jenkins. This item also comes from the Finance and Administration Committee. I'd like this ordinance to stand for its first reading and return to the September 28th, 2020 council meeting.
Unless there are questions or comments, this ordinance will stand for a first reading and return for the September 28, 2020 meeting. Item 11, consent agenda for a second reading. Would the clerk please read items 11A through D?
An ordinance approving funds from the unappropriated general fund to accounts in the Parks and Recreation Department. Item B, an ordinance to amend Chapter 1711 nuisance and property maintenance of the codified ordinances of the City of Reynoldsburg. Item C, an ordinance to accept the extension agreement from the Ohio Auditor of State for an independent public accountant for the 2020 through 2022. And D, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a lease agreement with Modern Office Methods for the City Hall copiers.
Items 12A through D are part of a consent agenda. All of these ordinances stand for a second reading unless someone wants to remove an item for further discussion. Council will move forward with the consent agenda, and these items stand for a second reading. Consent agenda, item 12 on the agenda for a third reading and approval. Would the clerk please read items 11A and B?
An ordinance creating Chapter 973 of the codified ordinances of the City of Reynoldsburg to permit the city service department to establish rates and charges for electric vehicle charging stations. B, an ordinance establishing Section 351.19 parking and electrical vehicle charging stations of the codified ordinances of the City of Reynoldsburg.
May I have a motion to approve items 12A and B on the consent agenda for approval?
So moved.
Councilmember Bryant, may I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Councilmember Sabati, would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Bryant,
Aye.
Councilmember Strickland,
Aye.
Councilmember Salvati,
Aye.
Councilmember Pecoro,
Aye.
Councilmember Lawson Rowe,
Aye.
Councilmember Cotner,
Aye.
Councilmember Baker.
Aye.
Okay. Madam President, the vote was 7-0.
Thank you. Ordinances A and B are approved with 7 affirmative votes. Item 13 on the agenda is other council matters. Does anyone on council have any further items that they would like to discuss this evening?
I'm sorry, Madam President, I do have a quick question if our Director Dorman is still on the call.
He may not be available.
Okay, well, Mr. Balger, maybe you can help me. One of our neighbors just contacted me regarding trying to install solar panels on their house. I just can you talk a little bit more about that process?
Yeah, I could talk a little bit about that. So for them to install it on their roof, one, they would need to just get a zoning permit that would be through my side of the house. They would just need to come into the building department for that. And in addition, if they're going to be bolting it to their roof, they'll need a building permit for that. So we can have our residential building inspector basically go out and make sure that it's bolted on there safe, so we don't have any panels that sort of fly off during a storm or another weather type event. They're absolutely encouraged to offset, and we would we'll walk whoever the resident is through the process if they're willing to come in, or they can give me a call tomorrow during regular business hours and I'll walk them through it as well personally.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any other matters that they would like to discuss?
Yes, ma'am. Madam President, excuse me. I have 2 things real quick, and I know it's late and I'm getting sleepy, so I'll be fast. So my first one, I wanted to just share the pride I had in Reynoldsburg on August 29th, whenever we had the back to school supply drive right there in front of City Hall. And it was so magnificent to be able to serve right along with members of council, our mayor, members of the Lions Club, and from the school board. And we were able to give away over 300 bags, and miscellaneous school supplies and backpacks were also distributed. So I'd like to just publicly thank April Darling for all of her work she did in organizing this. And it was just great to be able to give back to our littlest neighbors. And then 2, I'd like to publicly congratulate Clerk Prasher. She shared with us, and I'm sure the audience does not know, but council knows, that she will be inducted into the International Institute of Municipal Clerks Athenia Leadership Society. And she would have earned this recognition in April, but thanks COVID, it's now going to be a few months. And so I just would like to let Clerk Prasher know, and let the audience members know, and our neighbors, how much she does behind the scenes for us. And she helps to prepare things behind the scenes, and she makes sure that we run like a well-oiled machine, because she, makes sure that we are actually what communications come into the city for us. She goes over and beyond extra to make sure that we receive it in a timely manner. And then she does helped to search things out for us. So I'd like to just say thank you and congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you. It's my honor to serve not only council, but the city of Reynoldsburg. So thank you very much.
Yes, and I too would like to thank Molly. She is Clerk of the Year, and she is our very own special clerk. She makes me look good every meeting that we have, and she keeps me in communications with our residents, and I just want to give her a shout out as well. Congratulations and being inducted into the International Institute of Municipal Clerks, because you are one of the best, and we truly, truly appreciate all the work that you do. We already knew that you were going to be the Clerk of the Year because you are our very own clerk, and we appreciate everything that you do. Regardless of any award that anyone gives you, we know how hard you work and how much you represent us behind the scenes. So yes, I truly appreciate all the work that you've done for us in just the short time that we've been here. So congratulations on your award.
Thank you. Hey, it's fun. I have a really good time. So that makes it even better.
She only says that until I walk into her office.
Madam
So
President.
does anyone else have any other matters that they would like to discuss?
Yeah, this point. So congratulations, Clark Pressure, and again, everything being said. So just want to congratulate again, and this is a big shout out for you. And also, I'd like to recognize our teachers, Reynoldsburg City School teachers, for working so hard to make sure that things have been happening. Kids are home. I have like a 7th grade and a 6th grade. I was telling that this is good, and then you are having fun. My son was saying, no, I'm not having fun. But I told him, instead of getting into the mess and getting the COVID and having all kind of issues, which one do you choose? Then he told that, okay, then I'm having fun. So they're sitting in the home and just having fun. But when I see from the other side, the teachers, they have to do the double or triple the work, because whole class has to be controlled one way and the syllabus need to be covered. At the same time, again, there will be some kind of accountability towards the, I think, board or district, whatever. So all those difficulties, and in spite of those, I think we are doing very good. So want to thank all the teachers, administrators, and everyone involved in the school system. So thank you. This is I want to tell. That's all. Thank you.
Yes, Councilwoman Bryant.
First, I want to remind everybody to fill out their census forms if they haven't done it already. That's wrapping up very quickly, and we need to make sure that Reynoldsburg residents are present and accounted for, so that we get the proper funding we need to do what we need to do to make this a good city. And then I want to thank Councilmember Baker, Mayor Begany, and Director Dorman for working with me. Power a Clean Future Ohio. We've just been named one of their cities that we're showing support for creating a more sustainable and resilient community built on clean energy and conservation. So we are looking forward to working with Clean Fuels Ohio to continue those efforts. Thank you.
Madam President, may I speak?
Yes, Councilmember Strickland.
Yes, I just want to say thank you to Chief Baker, Chief Sharps for the 9/11 ceremony that happened this past Friday. So again, I just would like to say thank you to everyone also who showed up, who participated for the 9/11 ceremony. That is forever will be with us. And I just really appreciate us taking a moment to recognize those that were lost and still being impacted.
Yes, thank you for that. Do we have any other comments from council? Well, I'd like to thank everyone for participating in this virtual meeting this evening. Our next council meeting is scheduled for Monday, September the 28th at 6:30 p.m. And at this point, council is unable to announce whether or not we will be meeting in person or virtually. We will post something as soon as we know on our city's website. And as there's no further business, I adjourn this meeting and the time is 9:10. Everyone have a great evening, stay safe, and we'll see each other soon. Thank you.
Congratulations.
night.
All.
Good night.